I didn't even notice her the first 2 weeks. Anna Kowalski kept her head down, hands busy, voice barely above a whisper. She worked for Mrs. Talbot, the housekeeper, who ran my household with the same strictness I used to run cattle drives. After my wife died 3 years back, I let Mrs. Talbot hire help as she saw fit. If Anna scrubbed floors or peeled potatoes, I wouldn't have known. But I remember the first time I really saw her, Dot. It was during one of those early summer storms that sneak up on you in Wyoming, hot wind 1 second, roaring sky the next. I'd come back from checking fences, soaked to the bone, boots tracking mud through the entry hall. The house was dark, but for a low fire in the kitchen, and there she was, Dot, not cleaning, not working, just standing in the middle of the kitchen barefoot, flour on her cheeks, tears in her eyes, and 2 loaves of dough rising on the counter. She turned so fast you'd think I caught her stealing silver. "I'll clean it up," she said quickly, thick Polish accent, wrapping tight around the words. I could not sleep. "I didn't ask you to," I said, surprised more by her presence than her explanation. She blinked at me, face red. Then something flickered in her defiance or desperation. I wasn't sure. "The thunder, it reminds me of the fire. The big one in Chicago. I lost everyone." I hadn't asked about her past, didn't think I cared to know. But now it was hanging there in the air, like smoke from a long dead fire. I suddenly remembered how her hands shook sometimes when a wagon rolled too close, how she flinched at distant gunshots, even when no one else did. "You lost your family?" I asked, softer than I meant to. "My father, my mother, 2 sisters." She looked at the oven like it held answers. "We came to America for bread. Fire took everything." I didn't know what to say, so I sat down at the kitchen table. "Then it makes sense why you bake at midnight." She laughed, but it came out broken. "If the world ends again, I want it to smell like bread." Something about that wrecked me. I watched her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, her fingers trembling. She had the kind of quiet that didn't beg for attention, but demanded respect. Grief changes people. I knew that too well. "You ever eat alone?" I asked Dot. She shook her head. "Always." "Don't," I said. "Not here. From now on you eat in this kitchen. With me. When I'm home." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded instead. We didn't say much after that. She poured me coffee and cut a slice of warm bread, its crust cracking under the knife. I told her about my wife. She told me about her little sister, Helena, who used to sing in the mornings. I hadn't talked to anyone like that in a long time, Dot. By the time the storm passed, something had shifted. Nothing big, just a feeling. Like the first break in winter frost, Dot. It was the first time the house felt like home again. Bread, fever, and the first flame. The summer came slow, that year-hot days, cooler nights, and a kind of hush that settled over the ranch like it was holding its breath. Anna and I kept sharing meals. At first it was just supper, then breakfast. When I had time, sometimes lunch if I happened to come in from the pastures. Mrs. Talbot didn't say much, but I caught her watching us with that sharp housekeeper's stare, like she was weighing something she hadn't made peace with yet. I didn't care. Not really. Anna was still quiet, but not shy. She had this calm way about her that made you want to slow down. The way she sliced fruit, set plates, asked about the weather, it felt like she was building something steady in a house that had gone silent long ago. Then came the fever. It started like a cold headache, aches, nothing worth fussing about. I worked through it until I couldn't. One morning, I made it as far as the porch before the world spun sideways, and I collapsed in the dust. Next thing I remember, Anna was wiping my face with a damp cloth. Her hands were cool, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. "You stupid man," she muttered in Polish. "Working like you were made of iron." I couldn't even answer. I drifted in and out for what felt like days. I remember flashes her feeding me water from a spoon, mopping sweat from my back, humming lullabies I couldn't place. Mrs. Talbot later told me Anna never left my side. Somewhere in the worst of the fever, I thought I saw my late wife standing at the foot of the bed, but it wasn't her face anymore, it was Anna's. Not because I was in love yet, but because she was there, real, solid, and I didn't feel alone. When I came to fully, the room smelled like thyme and honey. Anna sat in the rocker by the window, knitting, her hair loose down her back. She looked exhausted. "Is it Sunday?" I croaked. Her eyes flicked to mine, surprised. "You're awake." I tried to sit up, but pain lanced through my chest. "Don't move," she scolded, walking over. "You scared me." "I don't scare easy," I murmured. "You almost died." She said it like a fact. Not dramatic, not weepy, but her eyes were wet. I stared at her, at the fine lines around her mouth, at the way she held her grief and her strength like two sides of the same coin. "Anna," I said, voice cracked. "Stay." She frowned. "I ain't staying. You're sick." "No, I mean—" I swallowed hard. "Stay after? Not just for the sick days. Stay for the good ones, too." She didn't answer. She just sat beside me and took my hand. You don't know what you're asking, she whispered. I did, though. I didn't have words for it yet, but I knew what it meant to lose someone and keep living in an empty house. I knew what it felt like to wake up and want someone there, not for chores or comfort, but because their presence made you feel less alone in the world. She stayed that night. Not in my bed, not like that, but in the chair, hand wrapped around mine. That was the night I started needing her, and maybe, just maybe, she started needing me too. By the time July rolled around, Anna wasn't just part of the household, she was part of my rhythm. She'd read weather signs better than my ranch foreman, could spot a sick calf by the way it blinked, and had a way of baking that made even old Mrs. Talbot look impressed. But folks started noticing. First it was the mailman, who tipped his hat a little too long when Anna answered the door. Then the man at the general store who asked if the young lady with the braid was my new bride. I didn't answer them, but I didn't correct them either. The day I brought Anna to the Sheridan barn dance, all hell broke loose, just not the kind you could shoot. She came down the stairs wearing a blue silk dress I'd had Mrs. Talbot alter from one of Martha's old gowns. It fit her different, but not wrong. She looked like spring rain and quiet confidence. I saw it in the way she held her chin, like a woman who wasn't asking permission anymore. The music had already started when we walked into the barn. The Jean fiddle player missed a beat. Conversation stopped. You'd think I brought a rattlesnake to the Sunday picnic. Men stared. Women whispered. Anna kept her hand on my arm, steady as a church bell. "I don't belong here," she murmured. "Yes." "You do?" I said. We danced. Her steps were small and unsure at first, but she followed my lead, and before long we were gliding. I didn't care about the eyes. I cared about the way she smiled, shy, then full, like a window opening to the sun. But not everyone was smiling. About halfway through the night, Caleb Finch, son of the wealthiest banker in town, came up and offered to cut in. "She's dancing with me," I said, sharper than I meant. Anna stepped aside, but Caleb wasn't done. "I just wanted to see if the rumors were true," he said, eyes flicking up and down her figure. "That the Sterling Ranch was being run by a housemaid with a pretty face." I moved faster than I should have. My fist caught his jaw with a crack that echoed louder than the music. Caleb hit the dirt. The fiddle stopped again. Anna touched my arm, gently pulling me back. "Not like this," she whispered. I turned to her. "You shouldn't have to live in a town that treats you like this." "I've lived in worse," she said, "but I'd rather live in truth." On the way home, we didn't speak much, but when we reached the porch, I turned to her and said it out loud. "I love you." She froze. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do. I mean every word." She stared at me like she was memorizing my face. Then finally she nodded. "Then don't stop saying it." That night we didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The air between us said enough. But I knew something had changed. We were no longer a man and a servant woman. We were S. And the whole town knew it. It didn't take long after the barn dance. 3 days, to be exact. That's when they came, 5 of them, all men I'd known for years. Church elders, business owners, neighbors. They rode up my lane in a tidy line, their horses brushed, and boots shined like they were heading to a funeral. And maybe they were. They dismounted in silence. Hats off, but it wasn't respect. It was warning. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, shotgun just inside the door. Anna watched from the parlor window. I knew she wouldn't hide. She was braver than that. But I hated that she had to watch it all. "We've come to talk," said Raymond Carter, the oldest and, naturally, the most self-righteous. "Talk, then," I said. They didn't waste time. "It's about the woman," said Harold Briggs. "The immigrant." "She has a name," I replied. "She's living in your house, wearing silk, baking bread like she owns the place. Folks are talking." "They always do," I said. Raymond stepped forward. "Jake, we're trying to be kind, but this arrangement, it undermines everything, the natural order. What's proper?" I laughed. "Proper? You mean like Harold's third mistress? Or how Jed down there still whips his ranch hands when—" "They talk back?" Jed flushed crimson. "This ain't about sin," Raymond growled. "It's about order. If you marry her or keep letting her parade around like she's the lady of the house, don't expect our backing when it matters. Land, votes, contracts. We keep this county running, not imported girls with sob stories." I didn't yell. I didn't throw them off my land. I just said, "You done?" Raymond hesitated. "You're making a mistake, Jake." "No, I made that mistake when I let men like you act like you speak for God." They left without another word, but Anna didn't. That night, she came to me with her shawl already around her shoulders. "I heard everything," she said. "You weren't supposed to." I heard it anyway. I reached for her hand. "Don't listen to them." "But they're right." Her voice trembled. "You'll lose business, support, friends, maybe more." I pulled her close. "Let them leave. I'll still have you." She didn't cry. Not then, but later that night I woke to the sound of her packing. "No," I said. "No, Anna." "I thought love could be enough," she whispered. "But I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." "You're the reason I have anything." The words weren't enough. She stepped back. "I need time." Before I could stop her, she left the room. I followed her into the night air. That's when I saw it. Smoke. Orange. Blistering light behind the barn. Someone had set it. A flame. I shouted for the hands, but it was too late. The fire tore through the rafters like it had been waiting. And inside, my prize bull, the one I'd raised since he was a calf, screamed once, then never again. Anna came running from the dark, skirts flying. We watched it burn together. "Shouldn't have come here," she choked. I turned to her, eyes burning. "You're staying. That fire wasn't your fault." But the look on her face told me it didn't matter. She thought she'd brought this down on me. And that's the hardest. Lie to kill the one that says we're not worth loving if we come with baggage. The smell of burned wood still lingered a week later. My bull was gone. Half the barn collapsed, and Anna hadn't looked me in the eye since that night. She still cooked, still cleaned, still moved through the house like a ghost. But something in her had retreated, like she was already halfway gone. And then came the wind. It started like any other summer gust, dry and hot, rustling through the tall grass. But by midday the sky turned an unnatural green. The ranch hands stopped their work. Birds vanished. Even the cattle pressed close to the fences, uneasy. I stepped out on the porch and felt it in my bones. "Tornado," I muttered. Anna stood behind me, barefoot again, apron flapping in the wind. "What do we do?" The funnel dropped from the clouds like a god's fist, miles away but closing fast. I shouted for the men to get to the storm cellar. But when I saw the barn doors banging wide open, I knew what was coming. The new foals. 3 of them, left in the side stalls where they couldn't escape. I ran. "Jake, don't!" Anna screamed, running after me. But I didn't stop. The barn creaked and shuddered under the rising wind. Dust filled my mouth as I lifted one foal, shoving it toward the rear exit. The second one bucked in fear. I dragged it forward, and then the roof tore loose. A timber beam crashed down, pinning my shoulder. The pain was instant and blinding. I collapsed, gasping, unable to move. The third foal was still trapped. Then I heard her. "Move!" Anna burst through the side entrance, like a wildfire. Skirts soaked with mud, eyes blazing. She didn't flinch at the flying debris. She didn't even hesitate. She lifted the foal's gate and let it out, like she'd done it 100 times. Then she ran to me. You idiot, she snapped, tears streaking down her dirt-smudged face. I told you to stay back. I groaned. And I told you I wasn't going anywhere, she said, wedging a board under the beam with her whole body. The structure groaned above us. You have to go. I coughed. No. She pressed with everything she had. Outside, the wind howled louder, angry and alive. Then I don't know how she shifted the beam, just enough for me to crawl free. We stumbled out seconds before the barn caved in behind us. The storm passed 20 minutes later. As fast as it had, the men gathered around us, bruised and muddy. And when one of them, young Travis, asked who gave the orders during the chaos, every man turned to Anna. She did, Travis said. We followed her. They all nodded. She looked around, stunned. I just did what needed doing. Ma'am, said one of the older hands, tipping his hat. You saved us. That night I lay in bed with a sling across my chest, staring at the ceiling. Anna sat beside me, bandaging a cut on her arm. You're not just a help, I said. I know, she whispered. I reached for her hand. You're this place's heart now. She didn't answer with words. She kissed me. Soft, sure, and full of everything we hadn't said since the fire. It was the first kiss that felt like home. I woke to the smell of lilac soap and the feel of sunlight on my face. My arm throbbed, ribs bruised, but I was alive. The tornado had passed, and so had something between us, like the storm had blown the last of our walls clean down. Anna was perched on the edge of the bed, her fingers laced with mine, head resting against the quilt. Her braid had come loose in the night, dark waves tumbling over her shoulder. I must have groaned, because her eyes fluttered open. You're awake, she whispered. Are you real? I asked. Groggy. She smiled, tired but sure. Last I checked. I sat up, wincing. Anna, she touched my lips. You don't have to say anything. But I did. Marry me. She froze. What? I mean it. I reached for her hand. This house was never whole until you walked into it. You've been risking everything for me, for this ranch. I want you beside me, not behind me, as my wife. Jake. You don't have to say yes, I said quickly, my voice cracking. You can think about it. Take time. Hell, you can say no. But I need you to know. I want you. The silence stretched. You know what they'll say, she whispered. I don't give a damn. They'll call me a whore, a gold digger. Say I trapped you. Let them, I said. They've said worse. Her eyes glistened. This town will never see me the way you do. Then we'll show them what they're missing. She leaned in close, resting her forehead against mine. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She kissed me, slow, tender, like sealing a vow with her soul. Then yes, she breathed, I'll marry you. By dusk, the whole town knew. Mrs. Talbot nearly dropped her mixing bowl when we told her. Then she gave a nod so curt it could have cut glass. About time, she muttered, turning back to her dough. The church refused to host the ceremony. Judge Morrison, the same man who once warned me about Anna, offered his parlor instead. He didn't apologize, but he didn't have to. His eyes said enough. We stood before a dozen witnesses, some curious, some scowling, some quietly rooting for us, and we spoke our vows in the same room where Morrison had once told me to remember who you are. I'm a man who chose love, I told him afterward. You ought to try it sometime. Anna wore a borrowed dress and no veil. I wore my best shirt, freshly pressed and missing a button. But it didn't matter. We weren't marrying for spectacle. We were marrying for truth. Later that evening, we sat on the porch steps of the half-rebuilt barn. The sky burned pink above the Powder River Valley. Anna rested her head on my shoulder. Still sure? She asked. Every second. Her fingers slipped into mine. Then let's build something better, not just for us, for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. The bakery came a week later. Her idea. My investment. Our dream. And the town, well, it did what towns do. It watched. It whispered. But it also bought bread. And slowly, ever so slowly, it started to change. Sheridan didn't throw rice at our feet or decorate wagons with ribbons. But 3 weeks after we exchanged vows in Judge Morrison's parlor, A line wrapped around the block outside a little red storefront near Main Street. The smell of honey, rolls, sourdough, and warm spice filled the early morning air. The sign above the door read simply, Kowalski's Bread. Anna stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled, hair pinned, fire in her eyes. The first customers came for curiosity. The second, for quality. The third brought their neighbors. And by the end of the first week, the women who once turned their noses up at her were asking for her recipe. I don't give it, Anna would say, smiling, but I sell slices for 5 cents. Mrs. Ellsworth, who once warned me at the bank about foreign influence, now came in every Thursday for cinnamon rolls and gossip. And when she asked, half under her breath, how does a Polish girl learn to bake like that? Anna smiled sweetly and replied, the same way an American woman learns to judge, passed down from her mother. I nearly choked on my coffee. Anna didn't take insults lying down. She rose above them and made you feel small for ever throwing them in the first place. The bakery did more than serve bread. It became a quiet kind of revolution. Women came not just for sweets, but to talk, to rest, to learn. Anna taught the daughters of ranchers how to knead dough and carry themselves like they mattered. Immigrant girls, once hidden in back kitchens, now had a place to be seen. That fall, Wyoming Territory became the first in the nation to grant full suffrage to women. The legislature needed new blood. Sheridan sent me. I rode to Cheyenne with my name inked in the record books as one of the youngest cattle barons ever elected. But everyone knew the truth. I was the husband of the woman who changed the town with nothing but yeast and willpower. Anna never cared for politics, but she came to my swearing-in anyway. She stood in the back of the courthouse wearing a blue dress with flower on the sleeves, arms crossed like a sheriff surveying a saloon. Afterward, I asked how it felt watching a room full of men stand while I spoke. She said, like watching children pretend to build a barn. We laughed. Then she handed me a wrapped paper package. Inside was still warm bread with my initials carved into the crust. Your first legislative bribe, she joked. That winter, snow blanketed the valley in white silence. At night, we sat by the fire reading letters from customers, some from as far as Denver, asking to buy her bread by rail. She turned to me one evening and said, this isn't the life I prayed for back in Chicago. I tensed, waiting. But it's better, she finished. That was the first time I saw her cry without sadness, just gratitude. She put her head in my lap, and I ran my fingers through her hair, thinking of all the fires we'd walked through, too. Get here. Some flames burned to destroy. Others clear the way for growth. We'd lived through both. And somehow, we were still standing. The thaw came early that year. Snowmelt trickled down from the bighorns, soaking the pasture and sending green shoots up from the blackened earth where the barn once burned. Anna stood on the porch, one hand resting on the swell of her belly, the other shading her eyes from the morning sun. Behind her, our home had grown a new nursery, a second chimney, fresh white paint that caught the light like a promise. She didn't speak when I stepped out beside her. She didn't have to. We looked out over the land that had taken so much and given us more. I still think about it, she said quietly. The fire, the tornado, the whispers. I nodded. And I wonder, she added, if you ever regret it. Choosing me. I turned to her, brushing a loose strand from her cheek. Never, not once. Her eyes glistened. You gave me this life, Anna. Not just a house or the bakery or the name. This. She leaned into me, pressing her forehead to mine. Then let's teach her to be brave, she whispered, touching her stomach. To be loud when the world tries to quiet her. To love where others judge. We stood like that a while, breathing in the wind. Below us, the ranch hands prepared for spring grazing. Travis, now foreman, shouted instructions to 2 boys too young to remember the fire, but old enough to carry tools and dreams. The world kept moving, but we stood still, hearts rooted deep in the valley that had made us and tried to break us. Anna squeezed my hand, and just like that, I knew this child would never know a home filled with silence or shame. She'd know bread baked at dawn, storms faced side by side, a mother who rose from ashes, a father who listened. and a house built not on status but on choice, ours.